Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Blaine Oelkers. Blaine is the founder of Selfluence and What You Think About You Bring About, WYTAYBA. Blaine has a degree from Purdue University and Stanford's an executive program in entrepreneurship and has been featured as a TEDx speaker. Blaine fired the man over 27 years ago and has been running his own businesses ever since. We are very excited to have Blaine share everything he knows with you today. Welcome to the show, Blaine.
Hey, Ken, thank you for having me on Fire the Man. I love the name of the podcast. I've listened to some great episodes and, you guys are doing a great service here, putting this stuff online, inspiring people, helping people. And I hope today we can maybe inspire somebody else to fire the man.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we're here for. So Blaine, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your story and your background.
Yeah. So I am America's only chief results officer, which is an interesting story. But I had a couple of moments of dawning comprehension, where the light bulb goes off, you make a clarifying decision, and you kind of move forward. And so for me, actually, the first one came in college. So I went to Purdue University, like you said. And when I was there, I've always been, and maybe some of the listeners are like this, a seeker. Like I always want I'm seeking knowledge, seeking businesses, ways to make money, ways to improve health. I've always kind of been a seeker. And I saw this ad for a little book. It was actually this guy, Earl Nightingale, reading this book called Think and Grow Rich. And I sent away for this, I'm dating myself now, audio cassette back in the 80s. But I sent away for this and I listened to this book, Think and Grow Rich. And I actually ended up buying the book, reading it. And it was there that I realized, and later I made that acronym WYTAYBA, what you think about, you bring about. And I realized that my thoughts, that if I could take control of my thoughts, I could direct them towards whatever I wanted, and I can move in that direction. Now, you can't always change your circumstances, but you can always change what you decide to do about those circumstances. So that was a big moment for me, and that played a big role in my life, though. So that was dawning comprehension moment number one. But the second one, which helped me to fire the man, was my degree's in computer science, tech guy like you, and I came back from a long business trip. So I was in technical sales, my degree's in computer science. And I got back from this trip and my son, Bo, he was 1 year old at the time. And when I got back, he was like giving me the cold shoulder. And I'm like, hey, Beth, what's going on? Why is Bo giving me the cold shoulder? And she said, well, you were gone so long, he kind of forgot who you were. And I was like, what? And so that kind of hit me really hard. And then I also realized when I was a kid, I'd come home to the empty house because both my parents worked. And so that night, that I had a little dawning comprehension moment. And I made this clarifying decision that no matter what, I was going to work from home. Now, I didn't call it fire the man back then, but no matter what, I was going to fire the man and I was going to work from home, so that I could be there for my son and he wouldn't forget who I was. And so it took me a year and I started two businesses, probably pushed our marriage to the edge. We've been married 30 years now, though, so we did make it. But I started two businesses, and it took me a year. We're pretty conservative. We wanted to save up, ample money to, in case something went wrong or whatever. So a year later, though, my wife made this deal. She said, "Look, if you're a side hustle, didn't call it side hustle back then, but said if your businesses make as much as you're making from your job, let's save up 6 months worth of living expenses." And then, yes, you can do it. So anyway, we did that, made it happen. That was 27 years ago. And so I've been kind of working from home, working remotely, long before it was as cool as it is now.
That's awesome. I really like that story. And a couple things to note, like it's 27 years, that's a long time. And also, I think your wife is very smart too by saying, hey, save up 6 months of expenses and as a backup plan. I really like that. It's interesting. I don't know if I've ever shared on this podcast or not, but similar to you, I've heard this before in other entrepreneurs and other people in the business space, is something like a traumatic event or something happening in their life that makes them shift their mindset or their thinking a little bit. I had a friend, I used to work for the government, for the DoD for a really long time, and I had a friend pass away he was about my age, of cancer, and it switched my mindset a little bit. Like I need to be more eager and seek out things that I want versus just staying in the middle of the road. And so it sounds like you had a similar you had either a traumatic or you had an event in your life that challenged the way you thought, and you made changes, huge life changes because of that. And so it's interesting.
Yeah. And I call it this clarifying decision because it kind of takes like a lot of times we get scattered in all directions. I say kind of like a lantern, right? And it kind of takes you from the lantern phase to the laser phase, where you just like, you put all your resources and everything back of that one thing, and you just go for that one thing, And so I think sometimes it's like that. If you're going to quote, fire the man, it's going to take that kind of really kind of total focus in and to get over the hump. Now, once you get out, at that point, my business was making the same as my job, but a year later, my business was earning me 3 times as much as my job, and it's never gone below that. So, it's once you get free, like I didn't realize when I added it up, I was spending like 50 to 55 hours a week on the job, if you include like driving there, all the stuff, right? So it was when I got that time back, I mean, then it was like a turbocharge to my business, right? So, anyway, yes, you are right that you make that clarifying decision and you just put everything behind that. And then it cuts you through the fog. Like, and, shiny objects, if someone had a shiny object and it wasn't part of one of those 2 businesses I built, I didn't care about it. I got really, really focused in on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And talk about a good why. I call them whys, but yeah, children is a really huge motivator, right? So
yeah,
that's
children
awesome.
Health is a big one, friends, and sometimes life events. Sometimes, you can get fired from a job or something, some kind of life-changing event. And sometimes that can make you or that can break you. So you have to, it can be, tough as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dig into and you mentioned the acronym earlier. I don't want to butcher it. I'll let you say the acronym, but I want to dig into it a little bit.
So the acronym is WYTAYBA. What you think about, you bring about. And so it's a combination of your thoughts, right? What you think about, but then it's got an action component. You bring it about. And so a lot of brain science, well, first of all, you can go back thousands of years, and as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, and all these different people, we become what we think about. That's what the guy Earl Nightingale talks about. So there's a lot of kind of instantiations of this type of a phrase that dominant thought equals dominant behavior, right? But the difference is that what you think about, you bring about, is that you can take an active role in kind of programming where your thoughts go. And so for example, I give this example. My son, when he bought his first car, it was this maroon colored Acura TL. Now, I didn't even know what that looked like, but he sent me a picture, right? And so after he sent me the picture of that car, for the next couple of weeks, that car's everywhere in that exact color. I see it on the highway. I see it. It pulls up next to me. Like, all of a sudden, who put all these cars by me? Nobody. They were always there. I was just tuned into it. And so science has, shows you that there's at the back stem of the brain, this thing called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. That's the thing that regulates and decides what it sends to the conscious mind, right? So it's, your brain is like doing your breathing and your blood, keeping your blood pH the right way. It's doing like thousands of things at once, but it decides, what do I pass up to the conscious mind? And so once I had that Acura TL on my brain, I'm seeing it all over, right? And so that concept works in when you're trying to bring something about in your life, right? So we say, what you think about, you bring about. And so it can start in a very small way, right? So you can say, okay, I'm thirsty, and then I can bring about this water, and I can take a sip. So I just used WYTAYBA right there. But now you can start to do that for bigger and bigger things, right? So maybe some new movie comes out and you want to see this new movie, so then you WYTAYBA that, right? So, okay, when is it showing in the theaters? Who could I see it with? And then you go about making that thing happen. So you can that's what happened to me in college, is that I realized that I could dictate not the circumstances of my life, but how I responded to those circumstances. And that's what made all the difference. So anyway, I went on, I did and maybe we'll talk later, but I did a TEDx talk all about this concept of WYTAYBA and the power that it has to kind of dictate where you end up in life. And so that can be good or bad. And if you're in a bad spot, you might have WYTAYBA that as well. Or because you didn't do any WYTAYBA, then you got sucked into somebody else's WYTAYBA, or, if you don't plant anything in the garden, then the weeds are going to grow or nothing grows. So you can kind of end up a little bit of drifting in the wind. But wherever you are in life, you can kind of step back, take control of those thoughts, and really begin to direct your life in the direction you want to go.
No, that's interesting. And it's really it's really cool to hear the science behind it, because you always hear, of things like that, but then hearing the science behind it. And a couple things that come to mind for me is, I've got this kind of this poster behind me. It's a huge saying that I always look at and think about when I have difficult decisions. I have goals printed out, posted up, and so it's that thing that, it's like always like reviewing and looking at what you want, visualizing it, and yeah, so the science behind there makes sense. So as we kind of take that science and then turn it into practical applications and practical uses, how can the listeners get an hour's worth of stuff done in 30 minutes?
Okay, so this is a great framework. So what happened for me is that, I mentioned I started those businesses, and those businesses, I did start businesses, and still today, I like to run businesses that have no daily operations, right? So you have to get things set up, you have to monitor things, but there isn't any daily operations, kind of a lot like your e-commerce business. And so this gave me the time to do what I really like, is self-development. How do I get better? What can I do? And so I ended up starting a company, in 2009, I think it was, called Selfluence, the art and science of influencing yourself. And that's where I really got into these frameworks, and I realized that we're kind of all powered by Selfluence, and that you don't need anything else. Like the mind that you have right now, you've got all the software you need up there. You already know how to do stuff. And you might not be directing it, the power that you have in your mind. You might not be directing it all the time as much as you'd like, but you already know how to do it. And that is true for this concept of what I call the 30-minute hour. So that's how to get an hour's worth of stuff done in just 30 minutes. So literally you're compressing time. Now, this is very powerful stuff here. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna show you how to do that right now. But it's so powerful. I want to make sure that it's used for good and not for evil, right? So what I want to ask you, I've got this question. Let's say that you and we do 4 30-minute hours in a row right now. So basically, we get 4 hours worth of stuff done in just 2 hours. Now that leaves us 2 guilt-free hours to do anything we want. And I don't want you to say more work. Now, we might be type A, we might say we're gonna build our shopping cart out or whatever. No, let's say it's not work. So for me, and I'll ask you in a minute, for me, if I had 2 guilt-free hours, I do like the Peloton bike, which I have in my home office. So I might take a Peloton bike ride. I like hiking, so I might go out for a hike. I like to connect with old friends, and that's like so much fun for me. So I might connect with an old friend, and then I do work from home. I do like a good old-fashioned power nap. So I might take a 10 to 20-minute power nap. So, but Ken, what about you? What if you had 2 guilt-free hours, what would you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So like right now in the moment, I would probably go swimming with my son. He's at the pool now. And then I would take my dog for a walk. He loves walks. And then it gets me outside, because I'm like you, I work from home inside an office. And so, yeah, I would hang out with my son and take my dog for a walk.
Perfect. All right. So what I want the listeners to think about is, what would that be? Because as you compress time, I want you to put more of that into your life. Because in the end, I've studied a lot of people, interviewed a lot of people, and at the end of the life, they don't say, "Oh, I wish I had built my business more." They almost always say, "I wish I had more memorable moments with the people that I love." And it's interesting that when I talk about the guilt-free time, a lot of times things with other people, especially people that you love, come up. So anyway, let's put some of that stuff in. All right, back to the 30-minute hour. How to get an hour's worth of stuff done in just 30 minutes. Now, there is a day of the year. Some people have it more than once a year, but there's a day of the year where the average person is 3 to 10 times more productive than their normal day. Right? So 3 to 10 times, that's 3x to 10x. We're only looking for 2x, right? We're only looking to condense time from 60 down to 30, but they're 3 to 10 times more productive than their normal day. Do you know what day of the year that is?
I have no idea, but I'm excited to learn.
All right. So when people think about the 30-minute hour, the first thing I want you to think about is this day, because when I tell you what it is, you're going to be like, yes, that was one of the most productive days of my life. And so what it is, and you already know how to do this, it's the day before vacation. So think about this. The day before vacation, people are 3 to 10 times more productive than they are in a normal day. Now, it comes down to three things. And so I create a little acronym so you can remember it. So you think of the 30-minute hour, day before vacation mode. I have a little sign in my office, day before vacation mode, because I want to stay in that mode. But then I came up with an acronym called PDF. Now, PDF, people say, hey, email me the PDF or print out the PDF. So in technical e-commerce, that stands for portable document format, but that's not what it is for us. But it's easy to remember. That's why I used it. But for us, it stands for plan, delegate, focus, right? So let me unpack each one of those so that people can start to have the 30-minute hour. So plan, delegate, focus. So let's talk about planning. What happens is the day before vacation, man, you plan that day out, like sometimes down to the minute, right? Because you've got so much that you've got to get done. You really plan out the day. So if you'll just do that, that will give you some 30-minute hours immediately, because 1 minute of planning saves 10 minutes of execution. So planning your day, preferably the night before, but if not, first thing in the morning. So planning your day is key. Now, the day before vacation, the person wakes up on average 30 to 60 minutes earlier. So tomorrow, if you just wake up 30 minutes earlier, there's a 30-minute hour right there because you got 30 extra minutes. So a lot of times people do kind of wake up early. The other thing about the planning is, on the day before vacation, you have a very clear vision of what you're trying to do, and you live out this concept that people know about, but they don't always live about. And that is the 80-20 rule. So most people have heard of that, the Pareto principle, that 20% of what you do produces 80% of your results, but then 80% of what you do only produces 20% of your results. But on the day before vacation, you are planning out your day and you are doing just that 20%, the things that are high value, got to get done. And you're kind of ousting the 80. Right. So if you'll use some of that, you can oust some things out of your day to create time to create that 30-minute hour. So think about that. So it's getting up early, the vision, but really the planning. So that's part one. Part two is delegate. And so when you think about this, on the day before vacation, all of a sudden you become the master delegator, right? It's like, I've got to get this stuff done. And you think who before do. Think who before do. You think who could do this before you go do this. And a lot of times you're like, I can't do it all. I'm leaving tomorrow on vacation. I have to delegate this to other people. So if you'll increase your delegation and you'll ask people to do stuff, or maybe even defer some things till later, that can open up time for higher valuable stuff. But you become kind of this delegation master. I know my wife, she also works from home, and she'll be like, hey, I'm going out. Can I do anything for you? Boom, boom, boom. I delegate, the post office, the bank, all the errands to her. And I have a couple of 30-minute hours, from that. So planning and delegating. And the last part, which is where I get the most 30-minute hours from, is focus. And you have this very powerful, kind of weird, fierce focus on the day before vacation. Think about all the things that don't happen. There's no chit chat at the water cooler. There's no long conversations with people. There's no chasing shiny objects. There's no long internet traps. You're not getting stuck in the news media or social media or any media for that matter on the day before vacation, right? So there's all those things that don't happen. There's no long responses, and you become Dr. No. You become Dr. No on the day before vacation. So people say, Blaine, can you do this? No, 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 no. And if you'll adopt that attitude, that if someone asks you, you say no. And now sometimes that produces more free time, the 30-minute hour. But the bigger thing is that by you saying no, you avoid the 90-minute hour The 90-minute hours where someone says, hey, can I have an hour of your time to do this or do that? And it takes 90 minutes, right? Or somebody asks for 10 minutes and it takes 30. So no, you have to become Dr. No. So you want to add that in, in as well. You also tend to stay on schedule and focused. Now, how do you do that on the day before vacation? A lot of times it's with your schedule and you're blocking out certain times for certain things. And then on the day before vacation, people use timers and alarms much more than the regular day. So you're going to say, look, I only have 30 minutes to make these calls. You set a timer. I've got 30 minutes or I've got an hour to write this article, right? And you're going to set timers. I just tell Siri, set a timer for this time. So I'm using timers every day, not just the day before vacation, but using alarms and timers to almost kind of force you to get the work done. And then the last part of your focus is that you become this tasking master. You, on the day before vacation, you are a master of tasking. And there's 3 types of tasking. There's single tasking, multitasking, and batch tasking. You become an expert at all 3. So single tasking, that is when it's a job that only you can do and it needs your total focus, right? So for me, I write a lot of articles for mastermind groups and their newsletters. And so that's just something I do myself. And so when I do that, I can get an hour's worth of article writing done in 30 minutes if I will go into single focus mode. What does that mean? My phone goes into airplane mode. I shut down all the web browsers except the one screen where I'm typing into it. I shut my office door here at home, and I am totally focused in on that. Now, I will, if it was like the day before vacation and the monkey mind comes in and I'll get ideas for things, just like I'm sure the listeners do. I keep some scrap paper and I write the idea down. I don't want to lose it. I capture it, but within seconds, I capture it and I just put it to the side and I go right back to what I'm doing. So that concept, this is where I probably get my most 30-minute hours, is that when I'm going to work on something, it's that one thing. And that's all I'm going to work on. And I completely shut out the world and I just go after that task and I shut down, I destroy as many distractions as possible. And what happens is that you're really good on this on the day before vacation. And there's a little bit of stress involved there. But when you start doing this every day, you can drop into this like high concentration focus mode really quick. So I even use music. You can actually go to YouTube or look online. There's music that increases your level of concentration and focus. And when I put those songs on, boom, I'm in the zone. So that's single tasking. Second one is multitasking. Sometimes gets a bad rap, but multitasking is where you do 2 things at the same time without reducing the quality of either one, right? So like I can't do my email and be on this podcast at the same time. That's bad multitasking. But good multitasking is like, the day before vacation, maybe I have to run some errands and I'm going to be in the car for 30 minutes. So instead of, putting on 80s rock music and rocking out, I'm like 30 minutes. I can make 2 phone calls during that time. I can make phone calls and drive at the same time, right? Hands-free phone, totally safe, but I can do that. I can drive at a good quality level and talk on the phone, good quality level. Or I can work out and listen to this podcast, right? Anytime you can do those 2 things together and keep the quality up, that's multitasking. And then the last one is batch tasking. And that's just putting things that naturally go together, and you're going to save time. So, instead of running 3 different errands and coming home, when you go out, you batch the errands, you run all the errands together. Same thing. If you have 3 hours of phone calls and it's all spread out the day, you probably can do that in 90 minutes or half the time. If you make it all, you kind of bring them all together and do them, batch them together in one time. Same thing with computer work. Same thing with your own staff or your own interruptions, right? If you can batch the interruptions, a lot of business owners, they're like, oh, I'm working with a team or I'm working with employees and they're interrupting me all the time. I say, well, you're not batching correctly, right? So what you want to do is say, look, I'm going to be single tasking from 9 a.m. to 11. At 11, let's get together from 11 to 11:30. I'll answer all your questions. So you batch together that stuff. Another example is my wife. She also works from home and we used to like text each other all day long. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? total distraction, really bad. Now we just have a shared note inside our iPhone and we just put the stuff in there. It doesn't buzz, it doesn't come up. But then when we get together for lunch, now when I'm in the context of that person, I've batched all the interruptions together, much more efficient, and it's going to help you have more 30-minute hours. And the last thing with the whole overarching thing is that the day before vacation releases your inner perfectionist. So let me say that again. You're releasing your inner perfectionist, and done is better than perfect. Done is the engine of more. You're just about getting it done, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And when you release that inner perfectionist, you can get a lot more done, and you can compress time. So when you think 30-minute hour, think day before vacation mode, and then PDF, plan, delegate, focus.
Oh, wow, Blaine, there was a lot in that. So I would recommend to the listeners, just hit that back button, for 5 minutes and kind of re-listen to that and try to absorb all of that. And so a couple of highlights that I heard out of that one that I really liked was, well, for one, I've never thought of it as being productive the day before vacation, but you're absolutely right. I am always super productive that day. And so the other thing too is, I know I'm going on vacation, so I'm in a good mood, right? I'm like, I'm gonna get all this done because I'm bouncing and I'm out of here. And so a couple things that I really liked out of that is getting up 30 minutes earlier. Right there gives you an extra 30 minutes of your day. And so that's probably the lowest hanging fruit I think that you could do, is just getting up 30 minutes earlier. I really like the single tasking, multi and batch. Those are excellent strategies. And then I also like the using the notes with your partner, like, because I'm guilty. I have got my cell phone right there, and so that is definitely a distraction. And so yeah, there was so much stuff in there packed in there. So definitely for the listeners, hit rewind for 5-10 minutes, listen to that again, and just try to pull as much as you can out of that. That was great.
Yeah, well, and the thing about the reward is great too, and that's another part of it, right? So this kind of day before vacation mode, you could also give yourself some reward, right? You can give yourself a reward after you complete a certain task, or maybe at the end of the day, you say, look, if I knock out these 5 things, I'm going to give myself a reward, right? And you make the reward equal, to the thing. Sometimes my reward could be, an extra Peloton ride, or it could be simply, rocking out to an 80s music or something, something that I like to do, or reading a book, or maybe connecting with an old friend. But yeah, put some of that in there too. Put some rewards in for yourself too. That's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you a little juice,
Right,
pep
a
in the
little
step,
brain
right?
chemical. Yeah, happiness.
Right. That release that little dopamine. Hey, there's
A
a
little
reward
squirt of
coming.
dopamine.
There's one other thing that I learned about you is that you've worked from home as an entrepreneur for like 27 years, right? Way before it was cool, and before the pandemic. And so as over the last few years, everyone has kind of worked from home, and I'm personally guilty of kind of getting into a rut of doing certain things that I wouldn't have done if I went into an office. So can you give any of the listeners like pro tips, things you've learned over the decades from working from home that make you more productive or healthier, or any kind of tips there?
Yeah. So there is a lot of freedom that comes from working at home. A lot of freedom. Now, with freedom comes some responsibility, right? So I can binge watch Netflix if I desire, or whatever that thing is. So there is some self-discipline involved, I think, from working from home, but it's also like getting to know yourself, right? Getting to know yourself, kind of keeping it simple, but yourself. And so, if you were to make a list, there are things that give you energy and concentration and focus. And then there's things that take away from your energy, your concentration, your focus, and your ability to build your business and work from home. And if you would simply just make those lists, and then this is going to sound very simple, but do more of what works and less of what doesn't, I think that's going to create a kind of a successful recipe, from working from home. So, maybe, having a cup of coffee, hey, that keeps you awake. So that's on the good list. But, having 2 beers at lunch, that might be on the bad list, right? Because then you lose your productivity and you're out. So you can begin to do that. I found that, I could really control my environment, and I like that, right? So I can have the snacks I want, I can exercise when I want, and those things can happen instantly, right? Because they're at home, it's all accessible. So that was good. I think, some people, I think having a specific location that you work, right? And this is the work area, of your home, and kind of keep it that way. That was helpful. My wife and I, with the kids, we had to have a lot of boundaries, because I could come out of the office, get the kids all riled up, and then just go hide in the office. So there was some ground rules that had to be set, for that. Some people like to dress the part, like they'll put on a certain, not necessarily business clothes, but they have like their work outfit kind of a thing that they put on, right? Because mentally, to try to get them, into the game. And I think that you have to be, a little self-disciplined to do it. And I think also, it's so easy just to fall back into the workplace when it's in your home. So I would caution you to have some kind of like a starting and an ending routine. And the ending routine is, when you wind it down, you go through some certain things, and maybe even turn off your computer and stuff. So it's not too easy to jump right back in, because, I found myself, having to do that, and having to kind of limit checking email, and you can easily kind of overwork. Now, luckily, my wife, is able to kind of regulate me and make sure that I didn't, kind of overwork. So having a good partner, right? Whether that's a business partner or a friend, somebody to kind of keep you, in check. But I think there's a lot of freedom. So you want to, maximize those freedoms, but at the same time, you gotta put in some controls and some self-discipline to make sure that it's a productive time.
Those are all excellent tips. Really cool. Yeah. And I think the simplest one that I would echo is the do more of what works and less of what doesn't. I think that applies perfectly. And so that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing those. And so as I read your bio, Blaine, I noticed something in there, and I'm very curious and excited for you to share it with the listeners. What are the lost pages of Think and Grow Rich?
Yes, yeah. So that is that's a juicy story that not a lot of people know. But so in college, I mentioned I read Think and Grow Rich in college. This is actually in the book I read in the 80s. For those of you that can see the video, anyway, it's still together. And so I read that book, and it changed my life. And that's why I came up with WYTAYBA, what you think about, you bring about. And I started using the principles in that book, which Think and Grow Rich is all about taking your desires and making them kind of manifest in the physical world. Now, he talks about finances, but it could be riches of any kind, harmonious relationships, good health, whatever, you kind of desire. And so I read that, and I had some success. I met my wife in college after that. I had some good success in my regular career. Then I started those businesses, and I had even more success. And I had enough success, and I'd read the book 15, 16 times, that I had the opportunity to buy one of the original 5,000 copies. Now, they say there's tens of millions of copies of the book in print, but I actually bought one of the original 5,000 copies.
Nice.
And so when I opened up the page, the very first page said, what do you want most, right? So it says, what do you want most? And so I read that, and I go, wait. I never read that before. I read this thing 16 times. I never saw that. And so what I realized is the first two pages were the instructional pages on how to read the book. And we can unpack those two pages if you want. And then I started reading it, and then later in the book, I'm reading the original now, and I'm like, and then he starts talking about his own mentors. And I remember he talked about this thing, invisible counselors, where he sits at a table in his mind, and he talks to, Thomas Edison and Henry Ford and these different people in his mind. And he listed about 9 of them. But then in the original, he listed like 30. Right. And then one of them was like Jesus. And I'm like, okay, I would have remembered that if I saw that before. So anyway, then I also realized that in the original book, he is like shouting all the time. So there's all this stuff that's in all caps and italics and bolded, but in this book I read, all the fonts exactly the same, right? You really missed all that. And so what I did is I said, okay, look, let me apply those 2 pages specifically. And at that time, my business was worth about $300,000, but I wanted $1 million business. I wanted to be worth $1 million. And I thought, it's going to take me 5 years, but instead it only took 5 months because I applied those two things. And in a nutshell, the very first page says, do not read this book until you know exactly what you want. Like do the work, figure what do you really get very specific, right? So I'm like, I want a business worth $1 million. I could, get very specific. But then the second page said, this is not like a book to read in a normal way. You should read this only one chapter per sitting or per day, let's say, but you have to read it with other people. And you have to read the chapter, talk about it, and then share what I end up calling your bring about statement. Share your bring about statement and tap into the brain power of those other people. Now, sometimes people call it a mastermind group, but whenever two minds come together, this third kind of more powerful mind is created. So like if I had 10 ideas for an Amazon, product, and you had 10 ideas, if we shared those, we wouldn't just come up with 20, we'd have 30, 40, maybe 50 ideas because we would feed off each other. So that third mind that's created is more powerful than the other minds. And so for me, I was realizing, so what happened is I did that. So, and for the next 5 months, I read the book with different people in like a book study. And then 5 months later, when this way for my business to go from 300,000 to $1 million, when that walked in the door in my life, I knew it. Like I knew it because I had been doing all that stuff. It turned out it was through a merger. So I ended up buying another business. And it instantly moved me up to the $1 million value. So anyway, that's what worked for me. And the strange thing is then I'm like, look, I've got to get this version out to other people, right? And so there was a gentleman, he was selling that version. He passed away and I couldn't get it anyplace. And so luckily, the very original version from the 1930s that was published by the Ralston Society was in the public domain. So I was able to get that. Well, I've got a green screen, so you might anyway, it looks weird on the green screen. But anyway, I was able to get that original. And so I published Think and Grow Rich, the book study edition, which has my own guidebook, but then it has a book study, and then it has the original text with all the highlight, bolding, and italics and all that stuff. So anyway, the main missing pages were those instructional pages telling you, to get laser focused on what you want before you read it, but then also how to read it in a group with other people. And then I think that if you just read any version, it's great. There's a lot of value there, but I think there's more value in that original text. And now that's awesome. The rest of the story.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And so if you're listening to this, Blaine he was holding up, several versions of the book, and a couple of them were really cool. So head over to the YouTube channel, check out the video, and you'll be able to see the covers and the books that Blaine's talking about. But a couple things there that you mentioned that I think are super powerful. And for the listeners, if you've never joined a mastermind or been part of a mastermind, they're just like Blaine said, they're very powerful. If you get a bunch of like-minded people together, the energy feeds off of each other. And yes, the ideas there are incredible. And so I really like that idea of, especially a book like that, that's, I don't have a hard copy. I was looking at my bookshelf in the middle of this, but I remember I listened to it on Audible. And so, but I think that type of book that has that high level strategy and thought and mindset, I think it's a perfect example for a book study, like what you did there. So I'm excited. I've got a note here. I'm going to go and grab that copy and take a peek there. And I might introduce it to my mastermind for we do like monthly rolling sessions. And so that's really cool. Great story too. So I definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time. I've got one more question here, and then we can move into the fire round. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. So one other thing that I know you're really, really good at is habits. And so I've got this here that you have a documented streak of 1,434 days in a row and counting. Can you share what that is, and how are you able to do that?
Yeah. So now I think today was like day 1,573 or something like that. So nice. The streak continues on. So again, this is the frameworks from Selfluence, right? Powered by Selfluence. You already have this ability to be a habit master. You already have it. And so it's something, I call it the 21-second habit. Or 21-second habits, let's say. And that's how to create a new habit in 21 seconds, not 21 days. So if they told you it takes 21 days, sorry, somebody lied to you. But a lot of times people say, I'm not good at habits, Blaine. I don't know how to do that. And when I'm talking to a big crowd, I say, well, how many people have brushed their teeth in the last 24 hours? Now, almost every hand goes up. Maybe somebody has some dentures, but all the hands go up. And then it's like, well, this habit of brushing your teeth, how many days in a row have you done that? Right. And then so people, it's years. They've had that habit for years. Right. So the first thing to realize, again, kind of like the day before vacation, is you already know how to create habits, right? You already know how to create habits. Now, scientifically, like science and neurons in your brain, it does take about 60 days to create a habit that then doesn't require any more willpower. But we're going to hack that system for you here today. So once you do something for about 60 days, then the neural pathways begin to lock in, and it doesn't take any thought or willpower. But back to the brushing of the teeth, that's how I discovered these 21-second habits. And it was my wife who, luckily this is past tense, but she used to have nearly daily migraine headaches. And so the doctor said, look, Beth, you got to fill out this log every day. And this is like a log about the triggers and the food you ate and the barometric pressure and the weather and all this stuff. And she would lose the log after a couple of days. She couldn't find it. She'd forget to fill it out. She'd have a migraine. Then I'd ask her about the log. Now, bad move. So then one night she's brushing her teeth, and that's when it dawned on me. And so the first part of the 21-second habit is what I call habit linking. So we took the headache guide and we put it underneath the toothbrush and the toothpaste, and we put a pen there. And my wife never misses teeth brushing in the morning and at night. So now at every night when she's brushing her teeth, she's filling out the log. And she went 90 days in a row. So she couldn't do 2 or 3 days in a row without losing it or forgetting it. She went 90 days in a row filling out the log, and then turned it in to the doctors, and they made some changes. And I mean, today, maybe once every couple of months, she might have a migraine, but it's very well improved. So that first key is habit linking. So think about, what can you link, for this new habit? What could you link to an existing habit that you don't have to think about, that doesn't have any willpower required? So my habit, I had 2 new habits at that time that I said, I want to do these every morning. One was I have this Bible app, so I wanted to do that. The other thing that I realized that I needed for my own self-development was I needed to take a daily mind shower. Now, a lot of people will take a physical shower in the shower and clean off the dirt from their body. But I realized that because of social media, news media, and all that, I needed a mind shower. I needed to kind of wash my mind out in the morning of all the head trash. And then I needed to kind of set a positive intention for the day. So I call that a mind shower. So I wanted to do those 2 things every single day. So I thought, okay, what could I have it linked to? So the first thing you do is you look for something you could have it linked to. And I said, well, what's the first thing I do every single day? Well, the first thing I do is I open up my smartphone, my iPhone, right? And so what I did is I moved all the apps off the homepage on my iPhone, except for those 2 apps. And every morning when I open my phone for the first time, I have to do those 2 apps, right? So there's the habit linking, no willpower required. I see it every morning. I open my phone every morning. I have for the last 1,572 days or whatever, 73 days, I've opened up my phone. So there's no willpower required. But here's the second key. The second key to the 21-second habit is you have to surf the urge to want to do something. So why do I open my phone in the morning? Well, I have this urge because I want to know, did any orders come in? Do I have emails? Have my kids texted me? What's going on in the world? I have all these things I want to check, my investments, my bank accounts, all this stuff. And I have this big urge to want to do that. So what I literally surf that urge, and I take the energy from that urge to want to do that stuff, to pour it in to do that Bible app and to do the mind shower, every single day. Now, then once you have a habit for really a streak of 3 to 4 days, then it starts to even take a deeper root, and you don't want to break the chain. You don't want to break that streak. And so for me, that streak now is lived now, like I said, over 1,500 days, and I don't even have to think about it anymore. It's kind of happens automatically. So when you want to start a new habit, what you do is link it to an existing habit and then surf some kind of urge, right? So my wife, she doesn't like that gritty, dirty teeth feeling, right? So that was, her impetus to brush her teeth. I just had a client the other day. She's like, Blaine, you always talk about next day planning. I really want to do that, but I don't do it. And I said, okay, and what do you do first thing in the morning? She says, I have a cup of coffee. I said, do you have to think about it? No. Does it happen every day? Yes. So I said, link the creating your plan for the day to the cup of coffee, right? So buy the coffee maker, put a pad of paper and a pen. And if you don't have your plan written by the time you make that coffee, then you surf the urge to want to drink that coffee. I want you to smell the coffee, get all lathered up to have that coffee, but then take that energy, right, and transmute it or redirect it into making that plan. Now I want you to win early and win often. So if your daily plan is just like the top 2 things you have to do today, that's great. Now, if you want to map it out like the day before vacation, that's great too, but make sure you set yourself up to win. Start small, win early, win often, win the battle of the brain chemicals. Done is the engine of more, and it's gonna take off for you. So that is the trick: habit linking and urge surfing.
I really like it. And, linking that to existing, it makes sense, and I can think of some of the stuff that I do in the morning that is every single morning. And so, yeah, stacking, I'm going to stack some more stuff on top of that. I really like that. Appreciate that you sharing that. Awesome. Anything else we want to cover before we get into the fire round?
No, I think I'm hopeful that we added some value here, and I hope people will use some of this stuff. I try to be real practical, kind of nuts and bolts stuff. So I'm hopeful that you'll use some of this stuff to better your own life and business.
Yes, absolutely. I know I will be. Awesome. So Blaine, in the fire round, are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is your favorite book?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Think and Grow Rich Book Study Edition. I'm pretty close to probably reading it 70 times now.
Nice. That's awesome. And yeah, I am definitely going to order that. That's on Amazon, I'm assuming.
Well, I self-published it, so people can get it through me, and I'm happy to actually send you and Dave a copy as well. But yes, you can get it through me. I'm actually working with someone right now to get it on Amazon as a print-on-demand book, but I'm not done yet.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll link to the link to get that in the show notes to buy from you directly. Awesome. What are your hobbies?
Yeah, I mean, my hobbies right now, the Peloton bike is a big hobby for me. I also, I mean, I like self-development. It is kind of my business too, but I like figuring out, how to create streaks, how to keep streaks going, how we influence ourselves. I think for me, that's some of the biggest stuff. Our kids are out of the nest, so we're empty nesters, my wife and I. So we do like a lot of just, going to the movies and, just hanging out together, playing games and stuff like that. So that's probably my length of hobbies.
That's awesome. Very cool. What is the one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
I mean, the 2 things that I hated, one is I hated being told what to do. Like, you have to be here, you have to do this, you have to do that. And then I just did not like office politics. And it was just everywhere. Somebody had drama, and I'd rather get it done than be in the drama. So,
Yes.
that's right. Being told what to do and office politics.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm in the same camp. What do you think sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think, and this will be good for the listeners to really hear, is I think that for you to be successful, most of the entrepreneurs I know had a good mentor. They had a good mentor. Now, not a mentor. So I had a great mentor. Let's say that great mentor. Like, a good mentor is someone that's done what you want to do. But a great mentor is not only someone that's done what you want to do, but they're doing it now, what you want to do. Because I've come across some people, they have this mentor showing them what to do, but like something that worked like 10 years ago, and it doesn't even work anymore. Right. So I think, having a great mentor, I was lucky to meet and share the stage a few times with this guy, Jim Rohn. He became kind of my number one mentor person. But anyway, having a good mentor, I think makes the difference.
Yeah, totally agree. And, something that I learned early on was, when you want to, someone asks you, hey, how do you get there? well, find someone that's been there and ask them how they did it. And so in its simplest form, I completely agree. And, having my own mentor has really changed my life and my business as well. And so, Blaine, can you share with the audience? So the fire round's over. Can you share with the audience, do you work with clients? Do you have a system? Like what do you have going on with your,
Yeah. Yeah. So as chief results officer, I do a number of things. I work with private mastermind groups to help their members get results. So that's a big part of my business. But then I also work a lot with business owners. And so I have my favorite things that we do this thing called Super Results Days. And it's kind of an accountability day, but it has a theme. And we get on Zoom every 3 hours. So you're learning something new, but you're also crushing your own to-do list. And you end that day, with a lot of things done. So you got a lot of dopamine all day long going, but you also gain some clarity. You make some clarifying decisions. So that's probably the favorite thing that I do are those Super Results Days. And I have master classes and articles and trainings and things like that, all about this self-fluence, kind of the art and science of influencing yourself, or maybe the power you already have to influence yourself. Because I think people don't need anything more. I think you have all the right software right now up here.
That's awesome. Well, we'll put links to everything in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, go hop over to the show notes, check out the links, and go learn more about what Blaine has to offer. Blaine, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing is I did a TEDx talk. So if you go to Blaine TEDx, so BLAINE TEDx.com, you can opt in and get that. And then we'll be connected. You'll have my email. You'll get to know me through a little series of emails. And if I can serve you or help you in any way, would love to do it.
That's awesome. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today and drop all the knowledge bombs and share everything with the audience. And looking forward to staying in touch.
All right, Ken, thank you for letting me be here. And I'll leave the audience with this. The bad news is that time flies. The good news, you're the pilot. So pilot well, my friends.